we're used to it. He was 7 minutes late for the pod today, and he knows Lisa has a hard stop. So
He turned off his lights.
I don't think we. I don't know if we.
Somebody just walked in. I was telling him to get
What
out.
did it? Were they naked? You turned the lights off like they were.
Tried to dim. It didn't work out. That was fantastic. If you're not getting educated about current real estate market conditions, whether you're a real estate agent, you're in mortgages, finance, title, you're advising people like accountants, you're doing yourself and your client base a disservice. This is the Knowledge Brokers Podcast. I'm Tom Toole. I'm here with Byron Lazine and Lisa Chinatti, and this is the week it happened, you two. 8%, crazy eights. It finally went down. We've been talking about this. We said don't be surprised a couple months ago if rates go this high. Happened a little later than I would have anticipated. It's very interesting what's happening right now. What do you guys think about 8% rates? What's the outlook here? What should knowledge brokers be thinking, and what should they be saying to their clients who are thinking about transacting?
Byron, ladies first.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. It's glad to have the whole crew back here today, too. It feels like a little bit since we had the three of us back on the pod. And just a little teaser before I talk about 8%. Next week, we're going to have a fourth guest, a chief economist over at Realtor.com. Danielle Hale will be joining the pod. So make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss that one. So, Tom, 8%. First thing that came to mind was we've broken the barrier that's been discussed since we hit a high of 7.37 back in quarter four of 2022. Obviously, we exceeded that high, weeks ago here in 2023. But you've heard 8% often. You've heard higher for longer often when talking about the interest rates. Jerome Powell's, his quest to break the housing market from a transaction standpoint, right, is coming to a reality. What he also has said many times is that you're not going to feel this until later. Okay, some of the moves that the Fed has made, you're not going to feel this restrictive policy until even later on. Now we're starting to feel it. So we've broken 8. Does the next conversation become 8.5? I haven't heard anyone throw out the number 9. Is that a reality in our future? Because sometimes when you break these barriers, it gets easier to continue moving up. Mortgage Banker Association doesn't project that. In fact, they've got us going back down under 7 in 2024. They've got us above 7 for quarter four of 2023, but they've also been wrong every step of the way. And every 30 days, they have to increase their target. The 10-year is at the highest level since 2007. It's at 4.9. We almost broke 5. 5's like another kind of like breakthrough number. If we break 5, what happens then? So this is just the reality that we're living in. If you look at total existing home sales on a seasonally adjusted annual rate, according to NAR that just came out this week, we've dropped below the 4 million number. We've never seen it since they started tracking drop below 4 million, even in some of the worst of markets. So a lot of people were saying it really just never happens. It never could. Now it's at 3.96 million. To Steve Harney's point of the founder of Keeping Current Matters, he says there's still 10,000 home sales a day. I make the argument, yeah, there is, Steve, but it's getting diluted by a bunch of part-time agents who sell 1 or 2 homes a year. Mm-hmm. And so if we didn't have 1.5 million agents and we had maybe 800,000 agents, you wouldn't really feel it. If we had 800,000 professionals instead of 1.5 million agents, wouldn't be that big of a deal. But my big takeaway on 8 is get used to it. Go wider on your database. Take detailed, articulate notes in the database, because there's going to be a lot of people that if you're a professional that today you should be advising to extend their lease another 6 months, to extend another 12 months lease, and let's do a strategy session in 6 months to get you prepared. That's the reality of affordability right now. And if you're giving great professional advice right now and you have detailed, articulate notes, when things do break open and you see a 6% world again, a 5.5% world again someday, because it will happen, now you are in position to capitalize and you're not playing catch up. The work of 2025 is happening right now. So that's my big takeaway on 8%. I think it could go higher from here. I think, quarter 4 and quarter 1 are going to be the hardest of it for real estate agents.
Absolutely. I think the flip side, however, is still being able to coach consumers, both buyers and sellers, for the strategies that will enable transactions to happen in this market. And I think kind of tying into the interest rate talk on both the lending side and the Tom Toole just pieced out.
Yeah, well, we're used to it. He was 7 minutes late for the pod today, and he knows Lisa has a hard stop. So.
He turned off his lights.
I don't think we. I don't know if we.
Somebody just walked in. I was telling him to get
What
out.
is it? Were they naked? You turned the lights off. Like they were.
Tried to dim. It didn't work out. That was fantastic. It's Halloween, guys. Surprise. I don't have my Thriller jacket on like Lisa last week, so I'm not appropriately dressed. But
anyway, what I was saying is some interesting stuff, right? The mortgage application rates are at a 29-year low. But there was an interesting article published about the fact that consumers are actually still completing cash out refis and giving up 4% rates, maybe not the 2s and the 3s, but we're definitely seeing consumers give up 4% rates for cash out refis because the increase in interest rates isn't hitting just mortgages, it's hitting consumer debt as well. So definitely some interesting stuff to look for on those levels. Coaching consumers, I think we've got to be realistic about setting timelines with sellers. I think the days and weeks maybe on market are going as we look at inventory increasing. I've got pockets in Mass where we're looking at 3 to 4 months of inventory sitting on the market, which translates to 120 to 100 and plus days to sell, which we haven't seen in a long time.
Are you tired of taking horrible courses offered by your local realtor board or the NAR online classes? I know I am. And the fact is, you don't get a lot of value from those courses. So here's the good news. BAMX, your real estate edutainment platform, is here. You can find out how to master objections with me, the objection handling king, practiced and scripted for over 20 years. You can learn how to use ManyChat with the broke agent and Jill from BAM. You can work with Lisa Chinatti about managing your CRM, understand how to use Canva for marketing, get Instagram hacks. All this stuff is right there in BAMX. Just use the code KNOWLEDGEBROKERS, educate yourself, grow your business, sell more houses.
3 to 4 is the national average right now. The Northeast is below. So to your point, you have pockets at the national average and then other pockets that are below because the Northeast is far below. I'll just mention, Lisa, because you said so between cash out refinances and then obviously the transactions that we have seen this year tied to a mortgage, in 2022, 90% of outstanding mortgage debt was 5% or lower, where today, call it 10 months later, it's only 83% is at 5% or below for outstanding mortgage debt. Still a much bigger number than you historically would see, obviously. And the average right now is 3.6, 3.7. That was in Bloomberg earlier this week. But yeah, as people cash out, Lisa, and give up 4%, or as some of these new, mortgages get accounted for, you are starting to see the pendulum shift a little bit. You're seeing the early signs of that. And this is where
without a doubt
you get another year of that, of what Lisa just mentioned in 2024. And then if you hit projections that in 2025, we could be in a world when we beat inflation, that's the target for beating inflation down to 2%, that you see as they start cutting, that you see 5% 30-year fixed. Then you will see a floodgate of activity in 2025, because when it goes 5%, a lot of people, this number could be only 70%. It could be only 65% have less than a 5% mortgage. And you're going to have more pent up demand and more people who have waited. And you're going to have new buyers coming in and being comfortable with affordability at 5%. And you will see a floodgate of activity in 2025. You only capitalize that as the knowledge broker by being really detailed and articulate now with how many people you can help and hanging in there. This low-hanging fruit agent is going to lose. They're going to get put out of business in 2024 because there's just not enough low-hanging fruit.
Absolutely. It's skills across the board. And I think, we operate on EOS. And one of the things that we always talk about is giving up the sacred cows, right? The things that we used to do because it got a result or it just is the way that things were done. And I've been digging into the company across the board with our agents, with our ISAs, with our staff, and saying, where are the sacred cows that worked in 2019, 2020, 2021?
Explain Sacred Cow, because I know the book you're talking about, but so people that aren't familiar with Sacred Cow.
Well, I did. It's a process or a thing that you've always just done for the sake of, and we would just say, that's how we've always done it, right?
Sure did, Byron. Come on.
Well, she kind of glazed over it. She's so smart that sometimes when she says things, not all of us layman folks, Tom, like myself, can really understand it. Thank you for reiterating it, Lisa.
You got it.
Yeah.
So,
go, Tom.
Byron, you've been you've been cut off, Lisa, with your fancy industry jargon. So, Byron, you were on the 5 a.m. call all week talking about longer for longer, higher for longer. I think you said something there. The low-hanging fruit agent is in a lot of trouble. And I cannot stress this enough because the savvy consumers are picking this up as well. I was on an appointment last night with someone who's done a lot of development in our marketplace and knows it well. And what he said was it's survive until 25 right now. This guy's this person has a building background, right? They have a construction background. They've seen this and they know what's coming. 25. I thought that was fascinating. And this is coming from a consumer side, right? This was something that he had said in the appointment when we're talking about his long-term real estate plans for him and his household. I found that to be very fascinating. And Lisa and Byron, we were both talking this morning about how you need to make sure you're really getting deep in your database, building those relationships, because what invariably happens in real estate is that people aren't ready for a long time. And then when they're ready immediately. Like you've been following up with someone for 6-8 months, you get nothing. And then all of a sudden you get a call. Hey, we're ready to list the house. Can you come over in 15 minutes? And this is not that far off base. I might be embellishing a little bit, but that readiness happens really quick because something goes on. And the agents that meet somebody one time and they don't like the house or they don't hit it off perfectly on the first meeting and they stop following up, you might as well just get out of the business now because this is not the business that we're in. You talked about 3 to 4 months supply of inventory. That's where we sat prior to 2020. It was that like 90 to 120 day inventory was about what we saw in our marketplace in the greater Philadelphia area. And it's still a really good time to sell a house. It's still a little seller friendly. There's opportunities to find some opportunities or properties you can actually buy, maybe negotiate with and get inspections with all the stuff that people have been complaining about. And I see this as a major opportunity for the people that want to build a business for the next 10 or 15 years. It starts literally right now when things get tough. And sacred cows, whatever you're going to call it, I look at it as long-term disciplines that provide a predictable result in business. And this is any sales business. So as you put your plan together for the year, I'm a big believer that you've got to determine, hey, what's my minimum acceptable touch point for a consumer? What's my minimum acceptable length of time I'm going to work somebody? If someone says they're a year out, you better be calling them once a quarter. You better be calling them maybe once every 45 days. I mean, maybe even more than that. Are you putting everyone on property drips? Are you giving people the updates that they need? Because when it does pop, it's going to happen fast. And there's going to be a lot of people left out in the cold. Survive until 25. That might be my new motto this year.
I like that. Survive until 25. It fits in with what I said this week on 5 a.m., which was longer for longer. Obviously, the theme of interest rates higher for longer. So in that world of interest rates being higher for longer, as real estate professionals, as business operators, as mortgage, as LOs, as whatever, as attorneys, as whatever field you're in, you've got to come to the reckoning that over the next 15 months, I'm going to have to work longer for longer. See, even I fell into the trap of the last, the 2 COVID years of being able to end your day at a certain time, being able to have more time on the weekends. And that's not the world we're in. It's when I say longer for longer, it's longer hours, not for the next 3 months, but then longer than what you're comfortable with. Are you going to run the risk of burnout? Not if you know what you're doing it for, you're not. Here's the thing. People that burn out don't have an end goal. So they're working hard. They don't have a North Star that they're shooting for, and they burn out because they don't know where they're going to end up. When you really figure out where you want to end up going into 2025, what you want your career to look like, it's going to be less likely to burn out. And I also mentioned on that call, Tom, there's like all these, religious books out there that say you should be working 6 days, take a seventh off. There's far too many real estate professionals that have gotten used to working 4 days and taking 3 off. Not going to work going forward.
What kind of career do you get to work 4 days where you're making more than six figures?
All of their friends in corporate America now do it because they got these hybrid.
Christ, don't even get me started. Can we delete that part of the pod? Go ahead. I'm done.
You're going to walk away and turn out the lights again?
Yeah.
Maybe.
You're going to put your pants back on?
We have a very HR friendly office here. No need for that, Byron.
What else is happening this week? Go ahead, Lisa. You want to tie that up?
What I was going to say, is going back to what Tom said with the calling once a quarter for somebody who's a year out. My point with giving up the sacred cows is that I think we need to do even more. And I think that the standard up until this point has been to make a phone call at that cadence. I think we have to look at, how do we do even more? Are we definitely layering in direct mail, like birthday cards, anniversary cards? You really have to be building a relationship and a human connection. I think as I've been digging into the listing stuff, one of the things that has been sticking out to me is that the seller usually picks the agent with the closest proximity. And it's not like they live in the closest area, but who is like all over that customer in a way that's all encompassing, right? And so we've been looking at, our ISA team and our agents used to make phone calls, but we're really truly looking at that quarterly phone call with a direct mail piece, handwritten within every 6 weeks, right? In between that quarterly touch.
How many days are you willing, Lisa, to come home at 10 p.m. instead of 5?
Yeah, I was at the office literally making outbound dials with my inside sales team and going deep into stuff until I think I walked out the door at 7:47 last night, and I walked into the office at 7:50 yesterday morning. It was a 12-hour day because I'm so committed to figuring this out and understanding how we set up our agents and our staff to survive until 25.
When I look at an agent in the field for the end of this year and going into 2024, there are so many opportunities to get face-to-face with people from 6 p.m. till 9 p.m. in your community on events or different local things or town hall meetings. Are there going to be some conversations around affordability in your county hall, in your town hall in 2024? You bet they are. Are you going to be sitting at home making sure that you make a nice dinner? And I get it. Some people have to be home, have to feed the kids and all of that. I'm just saying that in business, you don't have that luxury this year of being able to do that 100% of the time. You're going to have to mix in some of these really long nights. I'm listening to the Elon, I don't know, what is it?
His biography? Yeah.
Biography?
It's a good book.
It's really good, but people are like, well, how'd this guy do all of it? Look at how many nights in the book he's just working 16-hour days. He's sleeping at the office. Now, I'm not telling you to sleep at the office or sleep in your car or something like that. It might be a little bit too much, but it's going to be longer to make sure that in 2025, you can make up any lost income you had in 2024.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Well, even if you have kids, right? I find myself in that boat. Our daughters have 5 nights of dance class a week. I've got to be home. I'm making phone calls just like Lisa from my home office until 7:30 at night. I am sitting there sending videos out to people that I'm following up with. And Lisa, I want to be very clear. The quarterly call is a great start, but you got to do a lot more than that. I am totally 100%. In your camp. I don't want anyone to misinterpret what I'm saying here. And that's what it takes to get these opportunities, because when they do decide, there's proximity, there's who wants my business, who's going to follow up. And when you can put yourself in the position of, hey, I want the business and I know what I'm talking about, and a knowledge broker, that's a competitive advantage. And I've been through markets like this before. This isn't going to be that different than what happened in 2008. It's the same playbook. We know that it works, and you've got to commit the time to doing it. Lisa's working a 12-hour day. She doesn't have to do that, right? I don't need to make 500-600 phone calls a week. I've incorporated Saturday call sessions in my day. And I've had a conversation with my wife, Bridget. You guys both know her. And I said, hey, this is what's going on right now. Is it ideal? No. Do I want to do this? If there's other stuff I could be doing? Sure. But what's best for the business and what's best for the goals that I have and the business plan I put together, which Byron and I did that webinar a couple of weeks ago, that's what needs to happen to hit numbers, to get to appointments and objectives, to get to the KPIs and goals. I posted a poll on my Instagram yesterday. I have mostly real estate agents follow me. 40% of them never did a business plan before. That is a fundamental, this is the answer in the poll. You can put this up right now. That's the fundamental issue. No one has a plan going into the day. Lisa's walking in the door at 7:47 or whenever you got there. You know what you're doing, right? Byron's got a very regimented schedule, knows his plan. I have the same thing. I've got numbers I've got to hit. This is how you run a business right now in 2023 and 2024 to survive until the following year when things hopefully get a little more friendly and get a little more advantageous to doing deals. But you can't just wake up and look for that low-hanging fruit and not have a game plan because you're going to get eaten alive. If you're looking to level up your business, scale it out, be able to manage more clients, have a bigger pipeline, you're going to need a reliable CRM. And as a Boomtown user since 2016, we've got some exciting news that KV Core and Boomtown are now part of the same family. And that means they've come together. They're using all their knowledge, all their tech, and they're making an even better CRM that's going to help you scale your business, sell more houses, talk to more people, and manage your leads more efficiently. And if you're like Lisa, she's in her CRM every week. She's in her CRM every day. I think that's what she does in her free time. And she's constantly looking at it to make sure that the opportunities aren't slipping through the cracks. That's what a great knowledge broker does. So if you want to get your business to another level, lean into Boomtown. Visit boomtownroi.com/knowledge brokers for more information. Again, it's boomtownroi.com/knowledge brokers. I'm a boomer since 2016. It's leveled my business up tremendously. Lisa loves her CRM. Byron does too. You should do the same. Get with Boomtown.
The new data that has been presented in 2023 for business owners, for real estate agents, for attorneys and lenders should be enough data to get you to shift your plan, to get you to shift and adjust your daily schedule. I've gone from traveling between Naples and Connecticut once a month to now once a week. Trust me, I don't want to be on $99 coach flights that land at 10 p.m. It's not a dream of mine to be doing that.
You sure?
I'm pretty sure, but it's the reality of where I'm at in both of the businesses right now, where I need to do more, right? And all right, let's wrap that up. I think we got that one, yes. And that's really the punchline of 8%. You can deal with it. You just got to put the time in to deal with it. Do we want to talk on these lawsuits at all? It's the big news of the week.
Absolutely. So this is a great article posted by BAM here. Day 3 of the trial, the second day of witness testimony. They questioned the following people on how they train agents on commission: RE/MAX CEO Nick Bailey, former Coldwell Banker CEO Ryan Gorman, Keller Williams University executive Meredith Maples, Gino Blefari was questioned on day 2. And a lot of what came out of this, I found this fascinating, is that the questions were around how Gino Blefari said he pre-fills in the commission rate that he would want to charge. And that's kind of the argument here coming from the plaintiff. There was a lot of questions about presenting a scenario where agents earned X instead of Y being kind of the normal industry standard rate, which doesn't exist. And they really dug into these training manuals. And we've seen these trainings, by the way. We've all been at like coaching and stuff like that, where people are trained to do things a certain way. What kind of merit do you think they have with this kind of training and the case that, you know, these commissions are fixed and there's some antitrust issues there?
I like what Gino said. He is a big believer in training, and they're going to continue to train their agents. I mean, Gino's a professional. You got to have training. You got to be a professional right now more than ever. I think what some of these brokerages, broker owners across the country are going to have to come to grips with is that this whole tie-in with NAR is out the window. Okay, that is gone. Those days are over. And it's going to just take, it's not about necessarily 1.5 million agents. It's about the right agents that can articulate the value that they're going to deliver for the client. And those agents are going to be quite fine in the new world to me. You have a real debate here on the validity as well of some of these claims from consumers. You had one consumer, when questioned, admit that they knew what, a seller that is like one of their lead, examples here on the case. He said, yeah, I knew that the commission was negotiable. I just think it's unfair. Well, the attorney says a deal's a deal. You knew the commission was negotiable.
I
You
love
made
that.
a deal. And then afterwards, you just want to complain about it because you couldn't run your calculator beforehand. There's some of this that's super debatable, that it's just like you got whiny sellers. It's a small group of people, because when you talk to a lot of consumers, they want this service. So there's a real debate there, and I'm looking forward to next week more so than anything, when the attorneys for NAR and the attorneys for the brokerages really have their moment there. But Lisa, what were your big takeaways?
Well, so there were, I think, to your point, it was understanding some of the defendant stuff. I think we know from our side, we know a lot about the industry folks at stake. We know a lot about NAR and the different brokerages. But to your point, it was very interesting to read the perspective of the home sellers who joined in as defendants, especially those that were speaking out publicly, including one whose mother was a real estate agent. I found that to be
That was
very,
interesting. For 30
very
years.
correct. Yeah, not like a part-time, short-term real estate agent, but enough to assume that this particular seller, was
It,
brought up
it
the
sounded like
income.
her mother was no longer alive,
That was my take on it as
because
well.
she had like a comment like, I know my mother would want me to do this. Like, I don't know, if your mom was an agent for 30 years, she's probably going to be raining hell down on you right now. She might not, she might have a different opinion than you think.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
she raised the daughter on a living of selling. I mean, it's kind of
So,
hypocritical.
some of these, and that one in particular, they don't even understand what they're talking about, because she's like, my mother would want me to do this because I know how hard she worked for her buyers. Well, you're totally contradicting your stance. You actually don't understand the whole argument. And I'm hopeful that the NAR attorneys are smart enough to pick some of this stuff apart next week.
Yeah, well, I think in the opening statements, I haven't seen a ton of coverage of this component of it, but in the opening statements, there was a comment that buyer agencies representation should be for I'm drawing a blank on what the exact word was, maybe for the elite or for the wealthy, or the gist of it was that buyer agency representation is a luxury. Which I think goes against everything that we've worked for within the country and within the industry, to bring representation to those who actually need it the most. Going back to the defendants, there was one interesting one where the consumer had agreed to a 5.5% commission, and when he actually went back to revisit his closing disclosure, it turned out he had been charged a 6% commission on the closing disclosure, and that's what was paid out, and he didn't catch it at the time. Again, begs the question of, who's at fault for that? But does it still warrant going to this level?
Well, on that one, it's just like, okay, what's the listing agreement say? Does it say 5.5? I think it was
It
5.7
said
actually.
five. Oh,
But
I thought it said 5 points. Either way, he was
yeah,
overcharged.
it was under the 6, and it's
Right.
like, well, just go back to that. Should be an easy fix. Go back to the listing agreement. What's the agreement? Why is there?
Title will fix that, by the way. I mean, this has happened
That's an
before
easy
when commissions
fix.
haven't been paid out correctly on both ways, and people go and they go back. It actually, there's a form you sign. It's the title, like errors and omissions. Like, we'll go back and correct things. It's actually part of the
Correct.
closing package on either side, which is again, we're taking this to a
Well,
federal lawsuit.
But I believe that interestingly, I don't believe that the agents signed that form. That's between, and who knows what the actual backstory was, which I think is tough because I think we only get bits and pieces, right? Whether it
Sure.
was corrected or not, whether one of the agents disputed being corrected. A lot of gray area there, but it just interesting. Like I said, one of my big takeaways was understanding the perspective and the history, the background of the folks who are actually stepping up as the defendants. I do agree that the tying is definitely done. I believe that will be kind of over.
What's your take on cooperative compensation? Is that going to be done? Glenn Kelman from Redfin CEO doesn't believe that that'll be the case. He thinks it'll take DOJ action to actually, reach that level. And if that happens, that would be a seismic change. He says basically half the agents in the country would be unemployed if that happens. Do you think cooperative compensation should be allowed? And then do you think it will remain?
I think it should be allowed. I do think it will remain at some level. And I think I said this on a prior pod. I think one of the interesting things is in markets where you're operating at a already what would be perceived as a lower commission, right? So Massachusetts for us, in most of my markets, we're a 2% market. And I think if that 2% was taken away, I think we might see some sellers paying 3% when the buyer agent signs a 3% contract. And then it just gets written into the contract, into the offer to purchase.
The other argument that if you were not going to allow the listing broker to pay the buying broker, the agent representing the buyer, that when the buyer puts in their offer and the agent is asking for compensation from the seller, that especially in a world that we're about to get into where you might only have one offer and that buyer agent knows it, that they're the only offer on the table, that they're going to be able to hold up the deal based on their negotiation now with the seller for the buyer agent to get compensated. Hey, I'm the only one bringing this buyer to the table. They're doing a 3.5% down. This is the money they have, and I need to get compensated or we're not moving forward. And they tie it up imagine a deal getting tied up for a week because this wasn't handled up front
Well, and
before you went onto the market.
that's my point is I think that, just as we talk about the perception that agents steer, right? This was another big one that agents steer consumers to listings, steer away from listings with lower commission.
That's
In this
insane.
particular, I agree. But in situations like you just described, I think that it allows the opportunity for some questionable activities to come up where now do we have the buyer agent asking or demanding a 5% commission, right? Where if it was offered out at 2.5, 3%, it would be a non-issue.
It's black and white. That's what it is. This argument and this study done by these USC brats and the University of Texas of Austin brats that don't know, they don't know the difference between their dorm room and mommy's basement. This study is ludicrous. This whole agent steering to higher commissions. They sourced 265,000 listings that they covered on Redfin. And they said the number that they came up with, which I'm not disputing this, it's probably just data. Okay. This was the number that they came up with in this study, was that commissions below 2% take 33% more time to sell. And our best estimate is that such properties are 75% more likely to remain unsold out of the 265 listings from data from Redfin. Okay. I'm not going to dispute that because that's something you could find on the portal. Okay. Commissions below 2% take 33% more time to sell. Their conclusion that they drew from that was that agent steering to more lucrative properties is widespread and potentially a problem. They made the claim that agents drive listing activity, click activity on Redfin, which anybody who knows anything about these portals online know that consumers are the ones that are using Redfin. Agents hate Redfin, by the way. They would never send their client Redfin listings. They're sending MLS searches, other tools, maybe whatever they're using
Their own
to send
website.
their own website, their
Right.
Boomtown website. That's what they're using to send up a search. So the conclusion I'm drawing from this is the obvious one. It's the accurate one, USC and University of Texas of Austin. The conclusion I've come to is the consumer who's offering out less than 2% is also not investing in the marketing and the first impression of their property. They're also more likely, and we've seen this many times, somebody offering out 1.5% or not trying to offer commission at all, who has a price well above market value, an unrealistic seller, not a serious person, putting out a listing at 20 to 25 to 30% above what the market would even capture for their listing. They're throwing out a wish onto the market. And that's why it's taking 33% more time to sell. That's why 75% of the time they remain unsold. Think about a world in the last 3 years where a property remains unsold. It was someone who didn't invest anything in the marketing and more so went really high on the price. They weren't educated by an agent because they weren't investing in that part of the process. It has nothing to do with agent steering. You would, as an agent, you'd have to go so far out of your way to steer a buyer consumer to a particular property with a certain commission, because all of the data is readily available for buyers. Buyers are picking the property 9 times out of 10, not the agent. They're seeing everything on Zillow. They're seeing everything on realtor.com. Again, you'd have to go so extreme, as an agent. You'd have to break so much rules. And for me to buy into that conspiracy, I don't see agents. I haven't seen any agents going to an extreme like that to steer people into a particular listing. They might advise somebody to look at a particular property that suits their needs. It very few times has anything to do with the commission being offered.
Well, if you take what Lisa had said, and I agree with you. I mean, imagine you're a buyer, right? And your agent says, "Hey, we don't want to look at that one because the commission offered is too low." That's when the agent gets fired. Like, I mean, I would just be immediately out on that, and it's just not going to work because the buyers are the ones making decisions. Lisa, you brought up what happens if there's no commission being offered, and I've been on the other side of this, and there's actually some, in some cases, agents say, "Hey, I want more than what's being offered." But the MLS has some pretty clear rules on this that protect the seller, that it has to be presented before negotiations start, not after the fact. There's a whole protocol of what to do so the seller knows exactly what they're getting into. This goes out the window. That I think that opens up the seller for more liability here, to your point. And I also think about the transactions where the buyer comes in and says, "Hey, I don't want an agent. I want to deal directly with the listing agent." I don't know what your experience has been. Usually those are a disaster. People don't know what to do. They don't know the protocol. They don't want to listen to anybody. And those consumers end up getting themselves into some trouble, or they miss deadlines in the contract, which can put their deposit money at risk. This is undoing a lot of what was done for protection to buyers in the first place. Because, I mean, my pops has been doing this since the 70s. That was buyer beware. Like, good luck buying this property. We all work for the seller. There are going to be some ramifications here, and I would argue unintended consequences if this goes the other way.
As a seasoned agent, when I sold a house at the end of last year, I had to fire myself. I was dealing with the buyer directly. He was coming in unrepresented, and the whole thing turned into a complete disaster. And then I had to have Nicole list it, and she got it done in 2 days because she's a professional. I'm a professional too, but I'm in that case. I'm wearing the home seller hat, so I
There's
can't
emotions involved. Yeah,
I can't get through the owner of the property hat. When I put Nicole on as, just doing her job, be the listing agent, be the professional. She was working with a buyer agent on the deal, which I was happy to pay the buyer agent commission, by the way. And you know what? Me negotiating with this guy that came direct to me, I paid 2 agents, Nicole and the buyer agent, and I made $30,000 more in my pocket net at the end of the day than negotiating with this jerky myself. So you actually get to a place of negotiation that you want to end up at a lot easier, a lot less stressful. You protect yourself. Everybody kind of wins in that scenario. The buyer got what he wanted. It ended up really working out for me.
All right, I got to bail soon. We're over
All
my
right,
time.
let's wrap. If you guys, well, next week we've got Danielle Hale, CEO of, or not CEO of Realtor.com.
Chief economist.
Chief economist.
Oh,
You've been
boy.
disinvited to all future Realtor.com events right now, Byron. So
Lisa's besties
maybe I'll get into one.
Yeah, so
they're at her house right now. That's why she has to leave.
Yeah, he's picking her up in a stretched limo.
You're still so salty. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Where are you going? You going to something bougie right now?
No, it's our annual team building event with the company. It was supposed to be paintball, but the weather is not appropriate. So we're going to escape rooms.
Nice. All right, so we've got the chief economist. Drop a comment down below. Any questions you'd like. Maybe we'll pick a question for Danielle Hale, chief economist of Realtor.com. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell. Looking forward to next week's conversation with her.
Go get that knowledge.